everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video, I want to go over sideboarding and how you sideboard. We had a couple people in the Discord, the TCG Talk Discord, which is down below in the description, kind of asked to do a video on how I approach sideboarding and kind of how I go about doing it. So if you want to be a part of our conversation and be able to give more video ideas and stuff like that, please join the Discord down below. Really appreciate it. Whether you're a Ninja player or not, doesn't matter. But yeah, they asked for a sideboarding video, and sideboarding videos are really hard, right? It's very, very difficult because there's two ways you can go about it. You can go about it in a very super in-depth, like percentages and micro decisions, or you can kind of go in a more generalistic way. I'm going to choose the more generalistic approach when it comes to sideboarding and just kind of give you general principles, because I would venture to say most of the people that watch this channel are newer players or even medium level players that like the game. I don't think I have any calling hopeful winners trying to watch my content in order to get advice on how to, get over the hump. Maybe you are. If you are, that's great. I appreciate you. But most of the people probably aren't looking to have to break out a Google spreadsheet. They probably just want general kind of ideas on how that I approach it. So I have my file list open here, and I'm going to use it as an example for 4 principles. I have 4 basic principles. I'm not going to have a crazy graphic, so I'll repeat them as I'm going through, and I know I'll kind of summarize them at the end. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so if I cough a lot, I apologize. There's 4 basic principles I think you need to ask yourself when you are going to make your sideboard, right? Actually, there's 5. There's 5. I'm adding one on the fly, which is really big. It's like, how do you sideboard? So, or numbers, I guess. So there's 3 ways I have seen personally. If there's more, please leave a comment down below on how people build a deck, right? Some people will build like a 48 to 52 card core, and then they'll board in around 8 to 12 cards, basically based off matchup. So basically they have around 48 staple cards, let's just say 48. And then they have around 16 to 20, maybe 24 flex cards that only come in for certain matchups, and they board in that way. That's probably honestly the best way to do it personally. Like, you have 48 core cards that are a part of your game plan no matter what. But it's also one of the more difficult ways. In aggro, what I have found, and in Ninja specifically, a lot of people will do a 57 to 60 card core, like full deck, and then they'll side in and board out things as needed. And then I've seen one more way people do it, which it's Levi from Roundtable Wraith. Please check out their channel if you get a chance. I remember him saying that he just has like all his cards in the main board, and then he subs out cards based off matchup. So like, there's 3 ways you can go about doing it. For aggro specifically, I would honestly make a 52 to 60 card core of cards that go to your game plan, and then you sub in or sub out cards as needed. Now, that kind of goes into point number 2, which is, what is the game plan of your deck? The reason I ask this is because your sideboard, yes, your sideboard will be teching for different things, maybe different bad matchups that you have, but it also can't, your sideboard cards can't, if they just completely derail the main point of your deck, then it's going to hurt a little bit, right? So like for a simple case of this, and some people have it in Ninja classes, so this is just my opinion, but example of this in Ninja is unmovables. Unmovables were really popular. I used to have them in my deck. But what I realized is, like, having an unmovable in your deck, although it can save you from a big crush effect on Guardians, it also takes away your game plan substantially, because you want to get an arsenal. If it's not an arsenal, you have to pay 3 for it. And paying 3 for it basically means, yes, you're preventing a good amount of the damage, but you're potentially taking 2 cards out of your hand, maybe 3 if you don't have a blue, just to save some damage. And there is something to be said about playing patient and making sure you can mitigate a lot of damage, but it also takes away from your aggro game plan very, very, very significantly. So because of that, I don't like putting unmovables in a Ninja deck anymore, because it takes away from my aggro strategy, if that makes sense. I'd rather have sync belows, use my armor efficiently, stuff like that. So figure out what the game plan of your deck is. What are you trying to do? And that's a whole different story when it comes to deck building. And then make sure that your sideboard tech doesn't take away from your game plan. It only adds on to your game plan on top of helping prevent your opponent's game plan, if that makes sense. So that's number 1, right, was what are your numbers? How do you build a deck? Number 2 is game plan of your deck. Got to know what that is. Number 3 is, and this is kind of like the start of sideboarding, right? Is what is your meta, right? People are always like, what should I put my sideboard for my FI deck? Well, it depends, because not all of us are teching for nationals. Like right now, a lot of people are playing for nationals, so that's a little bit different. But your average player, you're gonna plan for what's at your local armory, right? And so like when I was living in North Carolina, we had a heavy Guardian Prism meta back in the Monarch time frame. A lot of Bravo, a lot of Prism, not a lot of aggro. I was like the only aggro player. We had Control Dash, so I was having to tech for a lot of control-y type matchups. When now in Texas, it's like the whole gamut really, but it's a little bit different. So it depends on your meta. Like if you're a complete Guardian meta, you're probably gonna have Sync Blows in your sideboard as a FI. If you have no Guardians in your meta at all in your local armory, you probably don't need to put Sync Blows in your sideboard, right? So it all depends on what your meta is. You need to figure that out and then be able to tech to that meta, right? So that's number 3. On that note, my number 4, so number 1 was game plan of your deck. Or number 1 was what are your numbers? How are you building your deck? Number 2 is what's the game plan of your deck? Number 3 is what is your meta? And number 4 is teching against an opponent versus wasting your time. What I mean about that is do not sideboard for a matchup that is pretty much unwinnable. For example, if I'm playing Katsu, I don't want my whole sideboard to be for Oldheim because you're probably still losing the matchup anyway, right? You're going to be wasting your time trying to find some godforsaken way to tech against Oldheim when that matchup is pretty much an auto loss. There's not a lot of matchups like that in Flesh and Blood, but I don't want people to like just not, to just have that much of an issue. Like you have to know what your meta is, but you also don't want to overcompensate and not have a game plan for other things in the meta. So, right. Same thing like Oldheim players. I highly doubt that they have all of their sideboard dedicated to Prism back when Prism was in play, because you're just going to lose that matchup anyway, unless something crazy happens, unless the Prism player is just bad, to be frank. So make sure you're not wasting all your time teching for a matchup that just isn't winnable. With Fi, I think every matchup is winnable. However, I wouldn't put all of my eggs in the Oldheim basket, right? You already can play really well and do really well against Oldheim. I wouldn't tech everything against Oldheim. I'd have some Icelander tech, I'd have some Bravo and Oldheim tech, and then probably have some like aggro or like other like minute tech, but just to kind of help my game plan. So make sure you're teching properly and you're not wasting your time depending on what your matchup is. As we're talking about Fi, it's not as important, but there are certain heroes that just match up really bad against others, and there's not much you can do about it unless the other person kind of just messes up. So make sure that you're not wasting your time with that. And then number 5, my 5th basic principle is make sure you swap in what you swapped out. Make sure you swap out what you swap in. So what do I mean by that, right? So this is my sideboard for my Fi deck. If I swap in 3 Sync Blows, do not take out 3 attacks. Take out 3 cards that are not attacks. So if I'm swapping in 3 Sync Blows, I'm going to take out 1 Rise from the Ashes. I'm going to take out 1 Ancestral Empowerment. And I'm not going to take out my Art of War. So I'm probably going to take out like 2 Ancestral Empowerments and 1 Rise from the Ashes. Like that's just how it is, right? If I side in 3 Erase Faces, don't side out 3 Ancestral Empowerment. Side out 3 attacks. I'm probably going to take out a 1 cost attack, so it helps my cost curve. Probably take the tempo. Maybe take out 1 Salt the Wound just cause. And then take out like, or I just take the tempos for Erase Face, to be honest. Make sure you're swapping in and swapping out similar cards, right? Final example is like Belittle and Minnowism. If I'm siding in Belittle, I'm probably going to take out my least important attacks. So I'm probably going to take out both my Ride the Tailwinds, and then take out maybe like 1 Salt the Wound, since I'm going to have an extra blue anyway. And then for the Minnow, you side that out, and maybe side out, or you can just side in the blue and have 61 cards. It all depends. The basic principle is, side out what you side in. Again, for Sync Blows, actually in this deck, I would against Guardians, I'd probably side out my Even Bigger Than That's, because I don't want cards that don't block. So just take out your Even Bigger Than That's, put in your Sync Blows, call it a day, right? That's how you have to approach it. Make sure you're not, because if you think about it, in Fi, your core game plan is attack, attack, attack. So if I side out attacks for Sync Blows, yes, I'm mitigating some damage, but I'm also taking away threats that I need, right, in that matchup, and it's just going to hurt you. So make sure you do that. So again, we have 5 core principles. Is first, figure out how you're building your deck. Are you doing the 48 to 52 card core? Are you doing like the 55 to 60 card core? Or are you siding in everything and then bringing stuff out? Once you figure that out, you can then see how deep your sideboard has to be. I'm kind of speaking in an aggro format. Like Icelander has a huge sideboard because it all depends, but like most time aggros don't have a huge sideboard. Number 2 game plan. Number 2 rule is, what's the game plan in your deck? Make sure your sideboard doesn't take away from your game plan. Like my Sink Blows don't take away because I have to add even bigger than that's out. Belittle doesn't take away because it gives me more resources for attacks. Erase Face doesn't take away because it's still a 2 for 6 that can technically get go again off of Soaring Strike, or off of even bigger than that possibly. So it's not super taking it away. So again, make sure that's good. Number 3 is, what is your meta? Because that dictates what your sideboard is. Like I said, if you have a lot of Guardians in your meta, Sink Blows might be a great choice. If you have a lot of Fimers and a lot of Katsus and a lot of Dashes and Viscerais, Sink Blow might not be the best choice. So it all depends. Number 4 is teching versus wasting your time. Make sure you're not wasting your time and putting too much of your sideboard towards a matchup that just doesn't work for you. Make sure that you see what your meta is. You see like look at matchups that are probably like 45, 65, 40, 60 not in your favor, and then try to tech to put those in your favor. Like for me in 5, if I was going to Nationals, right? This was my sideboard. So my sideboard, obviously, as you're looking at it, I'm teching against Icelander. I'm teching against technically Viscerai and Briar with Erase Faces. I'm teching against Guardian with Sink Blows, and that's kind of, what I'm looking at, right? So you can kind of see that already. So make sure you're not wasting your time with what you're putting in your sideboard. And then finally, swap in versus swap out. That is the biggest mistake I see people make, is they'll swap in Sink Blows and they'll take out, like, I don't know, Mounting Anger, I don't know, some random attack, right? Blaze Headlong. You're taking away from your game plan. Whatever you side in, make sure it doesn't take away from what you're trying to do at a core level, right? If that makes sense. In 5, I'm not afraid to have 61 cards because one already goes in grave anyway. People agree or disagree with that, it's fine. Try to go into more cards. Old Eye matchup, sometimes I'll run like 64 just to have a little bit extra in case he tries to fatigue me. But overall, hopefully this made sense. Again, I wanted to kind of go into like generalistic principles instead of like really minute like spreadsheet stuff, because like some people don't have time for that. You just want to have basic principles on how to sideboard. So hopefully that made sense. Thank you for the suggestion in the Discord. Please keep leaving suggestions like that in the Discord. I'd really appreciate it. If you have any other deck videos or video suggestions, please leave a comment down below or join the Discord, join the conversation with us. Really love to have y'all. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope I see y'all next time with TCG Talk, and thank y'all so much. Have a great day.